gonna get this kicked off. Welcome to Botanical Baking. First, let's start. My name is Delise Weir. I am a member of the Friends of the Farm and Garden Support Board, and I'm happy to present Ella Fleming today. In this evening session, in this afternoon session, we're going to ask that you begin with your microphone on mute. We have a lot of people registered. We'll see how many come. And at the Q&A portion, we're going to leave that till the end. At that point, if it makes sense, we might ask you to unmute. Otherwise, please use the chat or the Q&A function for questions. And we have Vanessa Ackerman, who is our tech assistance person. If you have an issue with the technology, please chat directly with Vanessa. And if you have questions, you can ask them in the chat or the QA to everyone in the group so we can all see the question and the answer. We recommend speaker view. That's going to highlight just the speaker on your screen. We ask you to keep your video off because we're going to show a couple of videos and that's a bandwidth thing. After this class, we will be sending you the presentation and a link to the video and a number of recipes. So good stuff coming your way. And the Friends of the Farm and Garden, upon which board I sit, and Ella sits as well. She's also a member of the board. We exist to support the Center for Agroecology and Sustainable Food Systems, or CASFS. And it's a very inexpensive membership, $35 for an individual, less for a student, more for a family, but you get such wonderful perks. You get the 10% off at San Lorenzo Garden Center. I, as an avid gardener, make my money back every year within about 2 shopping sessions. There are other wonderful garden centers that you get that discount on, and it's really worth it just for that. You're also invited to special events that are only for members, and volunteer opportunities will be coming up this year if we can ever get together in person. And then free and early entry to classes and events like our famous plant sale is available to Friends members only. So recommend you look into that. Vanessa is going to put a link to how to join, and maybe if you have the means, you could join right now. Now I'd like to introduce Ella, who's going to tell us about herself.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. My name's Ella Fleming. I am the farm manager at the Homeless Garden Project, a 3-acre transitional, 3-acre organic farm that serves as a transitional employment program for individuals experiencing homelessness in Santa Cruz. I was an apprentice at the CASFS program at the UCSC Farm and Garden, and a former staff member, and I also am a member of the Friends of the Farm and Garden. So yeah, really excited to be able to present this today. And I am also a baker. So I run a small baking company based in Santa Cruz, and primarily do special events, but do some custom orders for friends and for the community. Because I am a farmer as well, I do like to incorporate a lot of local fruit and flowers that we grow at our farm. And you can follow me at smella_fresh on Instagram or flour.ishbakingco on Instagram as well. And I post pictures of cakes and baked goods and stuff like that on there. So today, for this botanical baking class, what we're going to learn is how to bring some more plants into your baking. So we're going to do this in a few different methods. The first method we're going to talk about is going to be demonstrated in a lavender shortbread recipe. And essentially, we're going to take the plant material and bake it directly into the baked good. A little bit later on, we'll just describe that process a little bit more. Then we're going to talk about how to take the plant materials that we have, so the herbs and the flowers, and infuse them into fats, because fats carry flavor, and so the higher fat content you have of an herb, so the oilier it is, the more it will infuse into the fat and the more flavor comes through in the final product. So I'm going to demonstrate an Herbal Ganache and also talk about an infused buttercream. So just a couple different methods for how you can take plant material and put it into your baked goods directly. And then finally, we're going to decorate a cake, which I'm really excited about, using flowers and herbs and other plant materials. So the first recipe that we're working with is a lemon lavender shortbread. And this one, we're demonstrating how can you just throw the herbs in there, get it in there. And one of the best things about this is that we have it as a shortbread. A shortbread is primarily butter and flour. I do want to say at the beginning of this that all butters and creams that I'm discussing today, you can use plant-based versions of them, but I do recommend a high-fat version. So if you're using cream, I recommend coconut cream or milk, an almond milk, something with a higher fat content. And then there's so many amazing plant-based vegan butters out there. So, and oils, coconut oil is a good one. So what we're gonna kind of demonstrate in a couple slides is how to infuse the plant material. So we are gonna grind it. Grinding the herbs that you're using, and we're using lavender, is a great way just so you don't get a bunch of like herbal bits in your mouth. You can kind of grind them into a more like a flour so that it blends really well in with your flour and your sugar. So I use a mortar and pestle for this, and I take 1 tablespoon of the sugar and the lavender blossoms themselves, and then some lemon zest. And what that does is the sugar actually acts as an abrasion, so it will help break down the lavender flowers themselves, help them break down into smaller pieces. And then the lemon zest actually has so much fat and oil in it that will actually kind of absorb some of that oils from the lavender blossoms themselves. So it really gets the flavor into the sugar. And then as you grind that, kind of comes all together, and then you just add that in with the rest of your sugar. So you have like a very nice infused baked good. So I made these little lavender shortbreads here. And then these ones I actually turned into sandwich cookies and have had a chamomile infused ganache on the inside. So they're real like sleepy time cookie, but really nice kind of for any sort of, I don't know, people still have tea parties, but maybe it's a great tea party cookie. So that's our lavender shortbread. Thank you. And so I talked a little bit about a chamomile ganache a second ago. A ganache is essentially a cream, a heated cream that you add with chocolate. I like to use white chocolate for this when I'm using an herbal infusion, simply because it has less flavor than like a dark chocolate or a milk chocolate, though you absolutely can use dark chocolate or milk chocolate. It's just about finding a flavor that can really hold itself well to that. So maybe something like a rosemary or a mint, but the process is the same. So the process for when you're infusing a cream is you take your cream and you heat it over medium-high heat. The reason for this, and it's a little counterintuitive, is that you want to essentially blanch the herbs that you're putting in. So you can put your herbs in 2 different ways. You can either throw them directly into the cream that you're doing and then strain it out afterwards, or you can put your herbs into a mesh bag, like a cloth bag or a little mesh tea ball, and put that in there with your cream as it's heating up. The reason you want it to get to a rather high heat very quickly is that you want it to kind of blanch, as opposed to, so blanching, if you're familiar, you kind of just boil a vegetable very quickly, and it adds a lot of brightness to the plant. If you boil for longer, you've all had like overcooked broccoli or something, it's because it's been heating for a longer period of time. So if you do a short like a little short and sweet heating period, then you kind of keep some of that freshness, keep some of that brightness of your herbs. So the ganache that I made was a chamomile ganache. So I took chamomile flowers, put them in a cloth tea bag, and then heated them over medium-high heat. Just until I started to see steam coming off the top. Once you start to see steam, it's really wanting to boil, and you don't want it to boil. You want it to get warm enough that it can still infuse like a tea, but not so hot that it ends up boiling and changing the flavor and the fat content of your cream. So when you're doing a cream, high heat quickly, and then take it off. After you take it off the heat, you can allow the tea bag to steep in it for about 10 minutes. And then you can squeeze. I like to squeeze it because I feel like that's like the juiciest part of the experience. So you're really getting that infusion right in there. I squeeze it in there, I take the tea bag out. And then my cream, if I am turning it into a ganache, which is if I'm pouring it over some chocolate, then I'll bring it back up to heat. So I'll get it right up to that point right before it boils, right where you're seeing a little steam come out. And then I'll pour it over and then I'll mix it until it incorporates. Ganache can be done in a few different ratios. You can either do a 1-to-1 for something that's more spreadable, like a frosting, or you can do a 2-to-1, or so you can have it be thick or thin if it's very thick. So if you use more chocolate than cream, you can roll it into a truffle, roll it into some, shredded coconut or some cocoa powder or something, and have a little truffle. So ganache is a very utilitarian thing to know how to do. And it's a great way to kind of have some herbal and plant experience in that. So those little cookies were like little sandwich cookies and had some cream inside. So that lended itself very nicely. If you're doing butter, oh yeah, thank you. So if you're doing butter, you can do it in a similar way. You can add all your herbs in all at the same time, or you can have them in a tea bag. It's whatever you prefer, and it's also kind of whatever the herb lends itself. So if it's something like chamomile, where it's very fine already, you might want to have it in a tea bag. But if it's something like Tulsi basil, which is what I'm infusing this butter with here, then the Tulsi basil is large enough and can be strained very easily. So for this one, I took the butter and infused it at a rather low heat, but for longer. So I did it for about 10 minutes, and that just allowed for the butter to really have time to accept the oils. So there's like a little exchange that happens. So it grabs on the fat molecules inside the butter, grab onto the fat molecules inside of the herb, and kind of hold it all together. So when you have butter that you're using to make buttercream, you heat it up to that temperature, allow it to infuse. You can even let the herbs sit in there for another 10 minutes, and then you strain out the herbs so that your butter is really left with that flavor of whatever herb you've chosen. So for this one, for the cake that we've decorated today, I did use Tulsi basil. It's one of my favorite herbs, and it has a almost licoricey flavor to it that I think pairs really nicely with other herbs as well. So that's kind of how you can utilize that. So we have a couple other videos here that are examples of how to do this. The first one that we're watching now is the process of grinding that lavender and lemon zest and sugar to put into our shortbread recipe. And you can use a food processor, of course, if you don't have a mortar and pestle. But I do really enjoy, especially when I'm using lemon zest, I like to mix it in with my sugar and butter at the early stage of the cake baking process or whatever baking you're doing. I like to add it early because it gives the baked good that much more time to have those flavors infused. So if you're doing an herb, infuse it early. This next video that we're watching is infusing the cream with, this is chamomile in this mesh bag here. And I'm just squeezing out that last bit of chamomile tea, basically. It's like a cream tea. So that cream is it's subtle, of course, because chamomile is kind of a subtle flavor, but that cream definitely holds on to some of that chamomile flavor. So we live in a very special place in Santa Cruz. It's one of 5 Mediterranean climates. So we have these mild winters, and we are able to grow so many delicious fruits and flowers throughout the year. So I like to, when I get a custom order, bake towards, or have a wedding at a certain time of year, I do like to bake towards what's growing at that time. So if I have a fall wedding, I like to decorate the cake with dried persimmons, or maybe have persimmon be the flavor for the cake. Right now, we're kind of in early summer, very early summer. So we've got all these delicious berries and stone fruit coming up. And it shouldn't limit you what is available the season, because there's always ways to preserve the harvest. So if you really want to make blueberry cake in any time of year, you totally just make some jam when they're fresh. You can dry them. You can just, if you have a dehydrator, having a dehydrator is one of my favorite tools. Because it allows you to kind of hold the essence of what's fresh all year long. So I use dried or freeze-dried fruit a lot of the time when I'm doing decorating. I like candied fruit or candied citrus or candied ginger. I use that a lot when I'm doing decorations. I like to decorate with fresh fruit, but sometimes it's not always available. So jams and dried things and candied stuff is always available to you if you have the ability to do that. I like to decorate with edible flowers. It's probably my favorite thing to decorate with. I like to call them nature's sprinkles, because they really they add, the most beautiful color and texture and style to whatever you're baking. Some of my favorite edible flowers to use that are pretty easy to grow as well are bachelor buttons. They have such a mild flavor, almost no flavor at all. So they're very easy to utilize in a lot of your baking. They also come in so many different colors. So they have deep blue is the most common one, but they also, you can also grow a very dark purple one, which I enjoy as nice contrast. They have light pinks, they have light blues, and they're just really wonderful. And I'll demonstrate this when we're in the decorating phase, but they're pretty easy to pull apart and decorate with. Often you're using the petals to decorate with, because the centers, if someone were to eat it, it might not be so nice in the mouth. We also have calendula. Calendula is one of my favorite herbs. And I really like the flavor of it, but it can be strong for some people. So I just do a couple petals on something if I'm doing that. Borage is one of my favorites. It's very cucumber-like, but I'll demonstrate as well how you take out the spiky part of the plant, because it does a good job protecting itself. Dianthus, or it's in the carnation family. That is a wonderful flower as well, but you do have to make sure you remove the base, because it can be kind of bitter. But they have a very nice flavor. And then pansies or violets are one of my favorite ones, because I just think they're so cute. But they can wilt on a warm day. So if you have an outdoor event or something like that, just be mindful of that when you're putting them on. They can turn so tiny and they look adorable. But if you want them to kind of maintain the same size, you can dry them. So all these flowers you can dry, just lie them flat in between some books and some heavy books, and they should dry pretty quickly. I also wanted to include just some flavor inspirations. And of course you can be inspired by anything in your life. But these ones I really enjoy. I really like vanilla and rose together. If I'm doing rose, sometimes it can be really nice to have vanilla paired with it because it can kind of bring it a little more earthiness, whereas rose can be so floral. Lemon, I think, pairs well with so many things, especially herbal infusions and creations. I think it goes really well with lavender and with raspberries and strawberries. Orange and chocolate always reminds me of Christmas time or the holiday season. And so I really love oranges and chocolate in the winter time. And then orange also pairs really nicely with almond. Strawberries pair themselves really well with bright flavors. So basil and lime and mint. Blueberry and lemon is one of my favorite combinations. I think blueberries have such an interesting, nice flavor, and the lemon just adds like a little brightness to that. Apples, apricots, and peaches always lend themselves really nicely to spices like cinnamon or nutmeg. So one more way that you can kind of add, bring plants into your baking is by doing natural dyes. So you can use turmeric, which lends for a very nice bright yellow. It does have a very strong flavor, so just make sure you're pairing it with something that can handle that. So like a lemon can really lend itself nicely, or ginger. Matcha green tea does make a very beautiful light green color, but just be mindful that it does contain caffeine. So, you know, just be mindful when you're serving cake, what time of day and things like that. Butterfly pea flower is a really beautiful tea that is typically blue if you add it with to a frosting or something like that. And then if you want it to change color, you can actually even add some lemon, because the acid in it changes the color from blue to purple. And then also there's beetroot powder, which you can buy at a lot of herbal stores. And beetroot, if you use a lot of it, will turn it red. And if you use just a little, it will be pink. So finally, decorating. Decorating cakes is, I think, maybe the funnest part, but it can take a little while to find your style. So I've been doing this for, I guess, about 5 years now, 6 years now officially, but I've just like watch a lot of cake decorators on Instagram and on, YouTube, and now there's TikTok, and, there's all sorts of ways to kind of look at what different styles are. Also, there's such thing as cake trends. So, there's trends as far as like what people are making and all of that. So, and it changes just as rapidly as any sort of trend. So really take some time and find out what your style is, what looks aesthetically pleasing to you, and like what is enjoyable to do. So for me, I found that my favorite part is just putting a bunch of petals and flowers and fruits and stuff on there. If your style is more like technical and you want things to be really sharp and have sharp edges, there's something out there for you. So I think people making their own cakes for friends and family is such a beautiful act, and just find out what works best for you. My advice is to go slow. When you're decorating, you can always add more of something, but it's harder when you're working with frosting to take something off. If you do have to take something off, so you put something there and it does not look good, or it does not look the way that you want it, you can remove it, but it is harder. So I always keep extra frosting around. If I'm doing an event, I make sure I keep an extra decorating tool so that I can smooth out anything that, gets a little jostled in the transport or something like that. And my favorite thing about it is that you can be extra. You can go as wild as you want. You can fill your cakes with jams and nuts and fruits and all sorts of things. You can cover stuff in gold leaf. It can be as decadent as you want, as you have access to. So have fun with it is the most important thing. So I'm going to start decorating now. And as I'm decorating, you can ask me questions. So here I go. Is this working? Cool. Okay.
Yes,
so
we can hear you.
we're good? Here's my cake. And I'm going to start with kind of a big focal thing. So I usually like to start with something like a rose. Maybe just one. So I'm going to do a couple other flowers here. So I start by kind of creating my shape. I like to do a little bit of a crescent moon when I'm doing these types of cakes. I've got my spiral in the center, and then the outside I just start crescent moon. I actually like this less than this one. Okay, so I'm going to add a little symmetry here. These are marigolds and roses. And demonstrate.
Hey, Ella, I don't think you told us what kind of cake this is.
Oh, this is a lemon cake filled with blueberry jam and fresh blueberries. And then the buttercream is a Tulsi infused buttercream. I want to show y'all this thing. See this borage here? Here we go, this borage. So I told you about the little spiky center. The way you take that off, you just pinch the center. With that. So now it's like just a free agent removed from its spiky shell.
We've had a request to name the flowers as you place them,
Yes.
which you're doing. Thank you.
Marigold, borage. I'll do one more borage. Then I'm going to do pansy, violet. Pansy. Chamomile.
So we have a question about insects crawling around on the cake from the flowers.
Oh, great question. Yeah. So that can occur. I do like to have my flowers kind of, I do inspect all of them, even in the moment. And often that hasn't been an issue for me yet, though I could understand it being an issue. I mean, I guess telling people it's organic only goes so far in terms of having a, people want to eat on their baked goods. People maybe understand it more when it's kale. But if I do have insects on a flower, I just don't use it because yeah.
So you just look really carefully at the flower before you.
I do, yeah. And some flowers. So, for example, this here is Calendula. This one is like the kind where you could maybe a bug could get trapped in there and be lurking. But for the most part, when I do something like that, when I'm using this, I'm just using the petals. And the petals just really can be inspected as you're putting them on. Are there any other questions? I love that question. Love the idea.
There are more questions. One of the earlier questions was about dried versus fresh herbs for the infusion.
Oh, great question. I do prefer dried herbs. The reason being the moisture content. So when you're using fats, you know, you've heard oil and water as a phrase, they don't lend super great to you kind of, if you add extra moisture, you're going to change your the chemical makeup of what you're using. So you're going to want to stay with dried, because if they're too moist, they might add extra moisture and then throw off what you're working with.
Someone has missed out on what kind of cream you put on the lemon cake.
This is Tulsi Basil infused buttercream.
Is there any? And that's also known as holy basil, right?
Yes. Holy basil, Tulsi basil. Now I'm going to use some freeze-dried blueberries just so you can kind of see the difference. They look a little bit more like currants, but they're a little bit darker in color, which can be kind of a nice contrast. They're a little crunchy, so that can add like a nice texture.
We had another question about proportions. So sometimes if you add too many herbs, lavender in particular, it gets kind of medicine-y or soapy. Yes. What's the proportion like?
Oh, great question. I use just essentially a tea bag for a cup of cream. So if you're using cream, then you just kind of say, like, you know, maybe if you're doing 2 cups, then you use 2 tea bags full of herbs, or put extra in your little herb bin. If you're doing just herbs as they are, I would say about 1/8 of a cup to a cup. So about a teaspoon to 1/8 of a cup, or sorry, tablespoon. So it's a bit of a range, and you can kind of find out, like, oh, this isn't very flavorful. If you try it, then you can always add more.
We just got a great recommendation from somebody who suggested that you can put the flowers in the freezer for 20 minutes to remove the bugs.
Ooh.
I'm sure that depends on the flower, how delicate it is.
And then, yeah, what happens to the bugs?
And you have dead bug bodies
in your freezer.
I found that Nasturtiums like to bring ants along. I really check those out. And sometimes I'll soak them in water first and then throw them in a salad.
kind of messy when I'm playing around with this stuff, and I'm kind of thinking, okay, this pink, is that, you know, you kind of use your color wheel. I don't know that pink is really gonna add much to this. I'm kind of doing more oranges and blues and purples for this palette. And then you don't have to neglect the side of your cake as well if you've got like a lot of petals like I usually do. One thing I am gonna do is put a little fresh lemon peel on this. And I got this really cool tool that makes curls out of your rind. And I think it's like a bartending tool, but I really like it for cake decorating. So you just kind of pull it over a long piece of your fruit. And you end up with these really cool long curls. And I like to just put those on there as well.
So Deb has mentioned that it is lovely that you are using the flowers and berries that appear as flavors in the cake as well.
Yeah, I like to do that to kind of give whoever's eating it a little bit of a preview of what's happening. So to put lavender on the side if it's a lavender cake, or Tulsi basil on the outside so that people get a little bit of a little preview of what's inside. So since there is blueberry inside, I'm using a lot of blueberry. We have this mint here, which we'll pretend is Tulsi basil. And you can even, you know, you don't have to neglect the sides. You can press in.
Anne would like to know what variety of lavender to use.
I love this question. I was thinking of mentioning that. I like English lavender. People call it culinary lavender, but I think that it's the, you know, least soapy, as people say. I think it's the most. There's so many nice ones, but I think utilizing an English one is a good one. But whatever culinary lavender you can find. The one that I was using is English lavender, just because that's the one that we grow on our farm, but French lavender can also be lovely. It's just about what your relationship to lavender is like. If you're one of those people who thinks already it might be a little bit soapy, then I would definitely stick with a culinary type. So short answer is English.
Lori would like to know, how do you eat the cake? A bite of cake, a bite of flour? What do you recommend there?
Great question, because that's an important question. One of the reasons why I do this crescent is, especially if you're doing a cake for a wedding or something like that, maybe you don't, it's a cutting cake, for example. This lends that you just have this nice, clean, open space to cut into. So that's one of the reasons why I like this. And then when you're serving the rest of it, you might have to take off some of the larger flowers. Something like the borage or the little chamomile flower here, or the bachelor buttons are totally edible and won't be weird to eat. But like this rose would be weird to eat that as it is. So I would pull that one out. I pull these marigolds out. But they're very nice to look at. And then when you're serving, I would pull off the bigger, beefier flowers and leave the more delicate ones on that you leave. So you could just do full delicate and make your life really easy, or pull them off as you're serving. But that's a really great question.
It's looking beautiful. Someone wants to know, Stacy wants to know, do you ever candy your flowers?
So I don't, though I've heard that people can do it, that people do that with like pansies or something like that, and then you use egg wash. You use egg whites rather. You whip egg whites and then you brush the egg whites onto the flowers, and then you sprinkle them with sugar. I haven't done that personally, simply because I've tasted them in the past and been like, oh, it's so much crunchy sugar. It's not for me. But I think that if that's something, you know, it could be a really wonderful way to incorporate flour. So I'm totally for people doing that. I haven't done it myself because I'd rather eat just one of these pansies on their own. But I would love to kind of explore that a little bit more. So that's a great question. I'm sorry I don't have the answer to it.
Karen's interested to know how the base is decorated, where the plate and the cake meet. Are you doing anything on the side you can show?
Yes, great question. Okay.
Without tipping everything off the cake.
So I have my handy dandy cake spinner, which I really love. And so what I've done is I've made kind of a fake out, cake board. So at a bakery, you'll get these nice foil doily things. And what I've done is just put it on here so that I can transfer this to a more beautiful thrift store silver platter. So you can kind of put that on there, and then the silver matches the aluminum foil, and then from there you can absolutely, you know, decorate the sides. So we brought some beautiful plants from her garden, so I could kind of like put some stuff on the side here. Some of these really cool hops along the edge.
Oh, the hops.
Hops. Beautiful.
Folks would like to know where you get your decorating supplies, and do you have a recommended salad or cake spinner brand?
This is from Wilton. Wilton is kind of, they sell it at most Michael's stores.
Can you spell that for us?
Wilton's, WLTONS. And I haven't looked into the ethics of any of these companies, but Wilton is good stuff. Teco is another cake supply company. And I'm trying to think. That's it. A lot of the, like this one here is I think a Wilton. It's like cake spatula thing, and that I got from a thrift store. And then I just order some stuff online from various places. But Wilton is a good one. They make a lot of cake supplies that are pretty easy to find. And the hardest part is probably when to stop.
Is stopping, yeah. Are there any flowers you didn't use that you want to show as samples? Edible flowers.
Okay. So these are the marigolds that I used. You can always use lavender is a really nice edible flower. I have all these beautiful chamomiles. You do want to be cautious not to use false chamomile, which looks just like it, but chamomile will smell like a sweet apple. So the true chamomile you'll smell it. It'll smell very fragrant. We have beautiful calendulas here. This is a flashback one, so they don't just come in orange. They come in like, this is a very cool blushy orange, pastel orange. What else do I have? Elise brought some beautiful things here. We have this kind of buttery buttery yellow calendula, which is really beautiful. Geranium blossoms, which are very pretty. I think this is from your garden, Delise, but is this hyssop?
Yeah, that is actually, you could use anise hyssop, but that is Korean mint.
Korean mint.
Yeah.
Where, but
So it looks like you infuse with dry and decorate with fresh.
yeah, that's a great way to put it. I mean, you can also decorate with dry, depending on what you have access to. A lot of this is what you have access to. So
The bean blossoms are pretty, I think. If you want to show those.
yes, these are scarlet runner beans.
They're a type of that.
So this is a nice, beautiful red. I actually might use these because
They're red.
let me fit my color scheme here. And then it's always a question of like how much stem do you put in. Sometimes you can keep the stem and just stick it in there, which can be really nice because it holds it in place. And sometimes you'll have to just drape things on their side.
So how do bean flowers and nasturtiums hold up on a cake?
On a warm day, not great, but not terribly. They're not the hardiest, but they're not. I mean, you don't want to leave a buttery cake in the sunlight anyway, so you kind of want to think about keeping your cakes in cool places regardless.
And once you know which flowers are edible, if you taste them, you'll know if they have a vegetal or a sweet flavor and what kind of food they would be best on.
Definitely. And my biggest advice is try out different things. Try out what you like. If you find that something works for you, then do it. So these are the nasturtiums that Delise was talking about. They're wonderful, and they actually have a nice kind of spicy flavor, which can be really nice and sweet. But they're very, very delicate. So think about that if you're at a windy venue or something like that.
And they're kind of peppery, so they're good in a salad. Probably not so much a cake.
Decorate with the rest of these hops. I love them. Nice.
All right, last call for questions. I think we've done the questions.
Hey, well, thank you so much. I guess so.
I'm going to share a few more slides, let people know what's going on. Ella, that was a beautiful cake. Do we get to eat it now?
Yeah, we get to eat it, Delise.
Yes. That's what I'm talking about. All right.
Cake.
Thank you all for being here today. We try to do at least 2 of these kind of workshops a month. They are currently free and on Zoom, and we're trying to incorporate some in-person stuff as the pandemic hopefully dies down, but you never know what's going to happen, so stay tuned. August 4th, we're teaching sketching in the garden. It's going to be a technique class. It's going to be on Zoom. And then we're going to follow it up with actual sketching in the garden. So that's not on this list right now, but it will be offered. And I believe you can find it on the CAST's website. On August 25th, we have a wonderful event. Matthew Rayford wrote a book, a cookbook from the Deep South. He is from Georgia, I believe. And he is a former apprentice, and he's become quite the celebrity chef. He's all over the Splendid Table. I've seen him on NPR a couple of times. I've seen him in magazines. He keeps showing up everywhere. Well, he's going to show up here, and he's going to do a book signing and a book reading. And he tells stories about his past, his family, the family farm he inherited with his sister. And I highly recommend you look into coming to that. That will actually be in person and at the Hay Barn, where Ella and I are right now. And then Kelly, who is staff here at CASVAS, is going to be teaching seed saving and seed sovereignty. That's, again, a Zoom class. And then we're going to follow that up a few days later with a seed exchange, where everybody can bring what they've got, a little bit post-dated or save seeds, and we can all kind of share the wealth. And then in September, we have other things coming in the fall, but we're not quite firm on them all. So in September, we're definitely teaching top 10 medicinal herbs to grow with Paula Granger, who's a famous English herbalist here in Santa Cruz. And if you are a member of the Friends of the Farm and Garden, you have the ability to be one of the 15 people who get to actually walk through her garden. And it will be a first come, first serve situation. So that's going to be fun. You will probably receive email from us reminding you about these events, because now that you've attended a workshop, we have your information. So we put you in our mailing list, and if you want to be off the mailing list, you just opt out. It's not a problem, but at least we can let you know what's going on. Or you can always go to casvas.ucsc.edu. I wanted to point something out here. Help us improve. This is a link that we're going to send you afterwards, and if you can get your hands on it, Vanessa, and put this in the chat, that would be great. But we're trying to continually improve, and we are always doing these little workshop surveys to find out how we can do better and what worked for you and what you'd like to see us offer in the future. So thanks for filling that little fella out. And finally, we cannot really do the work that we do without your help. It's the CASVAS program is funded 60% by donations and, oh, I'm losing a word, foundation support. So we're not funded entirely by the university. It's not a university-driven program. It's a little bit different. So if you have the means, and I know these are hard times in the COVID world, but if you can, please make a donation. And there's a link there that Vanessa's also going to put in the chat. We're going to send you this presentation with recipes and resources that include the lavender shortbread recipe, the luscious lemon cake recipe, the yummy herbal ganache and buttercream recipes, and then the list of herbal edible flowers and herbs for decorating. And that is it. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you so much.
We're going to go eat some cake now. Thank you.
Happy baking.
Yeah.